No one noticed the bruise at first. Or maybe they did, but like most things in places like this, people saw, processed, and chose silence. It was easier that way, safer, cleaner, profitable. The restaurant thrived on illusion. Crystal glasses sparkled under golden lights. Soft music floated through the air like a promise of elegance. Wealthy men laughed too loudly, their voices soaked in alcohol and arrogance. Deals were made between bites of expensive meals. Power shifted hands over wine. And in the middle of it all, Amara moved quietly, like a shadow trained not to exist. She carried trays with steady hands, her steps light, her gaze lowered just enough to avoid attention, but not enough to seem rude. It was a balance she had perfected over time. Invisible. That was how she survived. Because being seen meant being chosen, and being chosen often meant pain. Her wrist throbbed beneath the long sleeve of her uniform. The fabric clung slightly where she had wrapped it too tightly, hiding the dark bruise underneath. Every movement sent a dull ache through her arm, but she didn't flinch. Pain was normal. Pain was expected. Pain was manageable. What wasn't manageable was attention. "Amara!" Her manager's voice cut sharply through the noise, low but urgent. She turned immediately. "Yes, sir." "Table 12, he said, leaning closer. "Now. And don't mess it up." Her stomach tightened slightly. Table 12. She didn't need to look to know something was different. The entire room had shifted. The energy had changed. Conversations had softened. Laughter had thinned. Even the air felt heavier, like something important had just entered and demanded respect without saying a word. Still, she nodded. "I won't." She picked up the tray, balanced it carefully, and walked toward table 12. Each step felt louder than the last, even though her movements were silent. Her heartbeat slowed instead of racing, a strange calm settling over her. She felt it before she saw him. Power. Not loud, not aggressive, but absolute. When she finally lifted her eyes, she understood. He sat at the center of the table, like the world had been arranged around him. Dark suit, perfectly tailored, no unnecessary movement, no wasted energy. Men stood behind him, silent, alert, watching everything and everyone, waiting for him. Luca Moretti. Even if she had never heard the name before, she would have known. Men like him didn't need introductions. They were felt, recognized, feared. Amara stepped forward, tray steady, breath controlled. "Good evening, sir," she said softly. Her voice didn't shake. That was the first thing he noticed. Luca Moretti didn't believe in coincidence. Every detail mattered. Every movement meant something. And the girl standing in front of him was wrong. Not in an obvious way, not loud or disruptive, but subtle. She didn't tremble, didn't rush, didn't overcompensate with fake politeness like most people did around him. She simply existed, calm, controlled. That alone was enough to catch his attention. But then he saw more. Not her face, not yet. The details, the slight stiffness in her wrist, the unnatural way her sleeve rested, the fraction of a second delay when she placed the glass down. Pain. Hidden. Practiced. Interesting. "Your hand," he said calmly. The words cut clean through the air. She froze, just for a second. Then she smiled, but it wasn't real. "I'm fine, sir." Luca tilted his head slightly. Everyone lied to him, but their lies were predictable, driven by fear, desperation, or greed. Hers was different. Hers was routine, habit, like she had said those exact words 100 times before and meant none of them. Across the room, a man laughed loudly, too loudly, the kind of laugh that came from someone who didn't understand the room had changed. "Hey!" he called, snapping his fingers toward her. "You missed a spot!" The sound was sharp, disrespectful, wrong. The entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath because he didn't understand what he had just done. Amara turned slowly, walked back, bent down, wiped the perfectly clean floor. Her movements were smooth, controlled, obedient. Her sleeve slipped, just slightly, but it was enough. The bruise revealed itself. Dark, angry, fresh. Luca conversed it clearly now, and something inside him shifted. Not anger, not yet. Something colder. Recognition. Because he had seen bruises like that before, on people who had learned not to fight back. He leaned back slightly, eyes still on her, mind already working, because the moment he noticed something, it became his, and the girl with the hidden bruise had just become very interesting. Amara felt it before it happened. The shift, the attention, the danger. She had spent years learning how to read rooms, how to sense when something small was about to become something much bigger. It was instinct now, sharp, quiet, always alert. And right now, everything in her was telling her she had made a mistake. Not by dropping anything, not by speaking out of turn, but by being seen. "Your hand." His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It moved through the room like a blade, clean, precise, impossible to ignore. Amara froze. Only for a fraction of a second, but for a man like Luca Moretti, that was enough. She straightened slowly, forcing her shoulders to relax, forcing her face into something calm, something normal, something safe. "I'm fine, sir." The lie came easily, too easily, because it wasn't just for him. It was for everyone. For the manager who would blame her, for the job she couldn't afford to lose, for the life that didn't give her room to be weak. Luca studied her. Not like a man admiring beauty, not like a man looking for attention, but like someone analyzing a problem, breaking it apart piece by piece. Everyone else in the restaurant had already looked away. They always did. It was easier not to get involved, easier not to care. But he didn't look away. He leaned slightly forward instead, interest sharpening in his eyes. Everyone lied to him, but most people lied badly. Their fear showed. Their desperation leaked through every word. Amara's lie was different. It was steady, practiced, like breathing, like survival. Luca found that intriguing. Across the room, the drunk man snapped his fingers again. "Hey, girl!" The sound cracked through the fragile silence. Amara closed her eyes briefly. Not in frustration, not in anger, but in acceptance. This was familiar territory. This was something she knew how to handle. She turned, walked back, bent down, cleaned what wasn't there. The man smirked, satisfied with his small display of control. But as she moved, her sleeve slipped, and everything changed. The bruise surfaced, raw, dark, impossible to ignore. For a moment, time slowed. Luca's gaze locked onto it instantly. He didn't blink, didn't react outwardly. But something inside him shifted. This wasn't clumsiness. This wasn't an accident. This was deliberate, controlled damage. The kind meant to remind. The kind meant to keep someone in line. His jaw tightened slightly. Not enough for anyone else to notice, but enough to matter. Who did that to you? The question cut through the room. Quiet. Deadly. Final. Every sound in the restaurant died instantly. Even the drunk man stopped smiling. Amara's heart skipped. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not like this. Not here. She straightened slowly, turning back toward him. It's nothing. Her voice was calm. Too calm. Luca stood. And that's when the room truly froze. Because when a man like him stood, things followed. Consequences, pain, decisions that couldn't be undone. Chairs scraped softly as people shifted back. Staff disappeared into corners. Even the manager suddenly found something urgent to do far away. No one wanted to be close to whatever was about to happen. Nothing, Luca repeated, his tone almost thoughtful. Looks painful. Amara met his eyes, and for the first time, she didn't look away. There was no defiance in her gaze, no challenge, just honesty. It is. A ripple of shock moved through the room. No one spoke to him like that. No one admitted weakness in front of him. No one answered him like they were equals. But she did. And that made everything worse. Or maybe more interesting. Luca stepped closer, close enough to see the faint shadows under her eyes, close enough to notice the exhaustion she carried like a second skin, close enough to understand this wasn't just one bad night. This was a pattern. Who, he said again, quieter now, hurt you? The room held its breath. Amara hesitated, not because she didn't have an answer, but because she did. And giving it would change everything. That was something she couldn't afford. That was something she wouldn't survive. So she did the only thing she could. She drew a line. That's not your concern. The words landed heavily, sharp, unexpected, dangerous. Luca's men shifted immediately, a subtle movement, but loaded with meaning. The drunk man took a step back, suddenly aware that he was standing too close to something he didn't understand. The manager looked like he might faint. Because this was how people disappeared. One wrong word, one wrong tone, one wrong moment, and they were gone. But Luca didn't react the way anyone expected. He didn't get angry, didn't lash out, didn't raise his voice. He smiled. Just slightly, barely there, but unmistakable. Because in a world where everyone obeyed, she had refused. And Luca Moretti had just found something rare. Someone who didn't bend easily. And that meant one thing. This wasn't over. Not even close. The moment Amara said it, that's not your concern. She knew there was no going back. Not in a place like this. Not with a man like him. Silence didn't just fill the room, it tightened it. Like something invisible had wrapped around every person present, squeezing just enough to remind them they were no longer in control. Luca Moretti didn't move immediately, and somehow that was worse, because men like him didn't rush. They decided, slowly, carefully, and once a decision was made, it was final. Amara held his gaze, even though everything inside her screamed to look away. Her instincts were fighting each other, one telling her to stand her ground, the other begging her to disappear. She couldn't afford either. So she stayed still, balanced on the edge of something dangerous. Luca watched her, not her fear, but her restraint. That was what fascinated him. Most people broke under pressure. Their fear spilled out, messy and obvious. They begged, apologized, over-explained. She didn't. She contained it. That meant strength, or experience, or both. Either way, he wanted to know more. He turned slightly, not toward her, but toward the rest of the room. "To the owner," he said calmly. It wasn't a request. The manager appeared instantly, as if he had been waiting for the moment to step in. "Yes, sir," he said quickly, his voice tight. Luca didn't look at him. His eyes were still on Amara. "Who does she belong to?" The words were simple, but they landed like a threat. Amara stiffened immediately. "I'm not—" "Quiet," the manager snapped sharply, panic slipping through his tone. That told Luca everything he needed to know. Fear. Not for himself. For her. Interesting. "She works here," the manager added quickly, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Double shifts. Keeps to herself. No trouble." Luca's gaze didn't waver. "Who hurt her?" The question came again. Same tone, same calm, but heavier now. More dangerous. The manager hesitated, and that hesitation was a mistake. Because Luca noticed everything. Every pause, every flicker, every hidden truth. "Bring him," Luca said. 2 words, no emotion, no hesitation. And just like that, everything was set in motion. Amara's stomach dropped. "No," she said quickly, stepping forward without thinking. "Please, there's no need." But no one listened, because when Luca spoke, the room obeyed. It took less than 10 minutes. That was the kind of power he had. Fast, efficient, absolute. The kitchen door swung open, heavy footsteps followed, and then a man was dragged into the room. Amara's breath caught, her vision blurred for a second. No, not him. Not like this. He looked smaller now, weaker. Nothing like the man who had grabbed her wrist the night before. Nothing like the man who had leaned in close and whispered that she needed this job more than she needed dignity. Nothing like the man who had reminded her to stay quiet. "Please," Amara said again, her voice breaking slightly. "Stop. He didn't—" "Didn't what?" Luca asked. The calm in his voice made it worse, because it meant he was already sure, already decided. The man dropped to his knees, shaking. "No, sir, I swear, she's lying. I didn't—" Luca didn't even look at him. His attention was still on Amara. "Did you hurt her?" he asked, almost gently. The man shook his head violently. "I didn't. Please, I wouldn't." Luca nodded once. That was all it took. His men moved, and the first scream shattered the room. Amara flinched hard. The sound cut through her like a blade. She turned away instantly, her hands tightening into fists at her sides. This wasn't what she wanted. This wasn't what she asked for. This wasn't justice. This was something else. Something heavier. Something that couldn't be undone. "Stop!" she cried. Her voice broke through the chaos. Sharp, desperate, real. And just like that, everything froze. Luca raised a hand slightly. His men stopped immediately. The silence that followed was suffocating, because it proved something undeniable. Control. Complete. Absolute. Luca turned to her slowly. "Why?" he asked. The question wasn't mocking. It wasn't cruel. It was curious. Amara's chest rose and fell rapidly as she tried to steady herself. "Because this doesn't fix anything," she said. Her voice trembled, but she didn't stop. It doesn't change what happened. It doesn't make anything better. Luca studied her carefully. Most people in her position would have wanted revenge, would have wanted to see pain returned, balance restored. But she wanted it to end, not escalate, not explode, just end. Different. Very different. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, "Take him away." The order was quiet, but final. After that night, nothing felt the same. The restaurant still buzzed with noise, laughter, and clinking glasses. Money still moved, deals were still made. People still pretended not to see what didn't concern them. But Amara, she could feel the difference. It was in the way people looked at her now, or rather, the way they didn't. They avoided her, moved around her carefully, spoke to her only when necessary, like she had become something fragile, or something dangerous. Maybe both. And at the center of it all was him, Luca Moretti. He didn't come every day, but when he did, the air shifted the same way it had that first night. Heavy, controlled, watching. And every time his eyes found her. At first she tried to ignore it, kept her head down, focused on work, stayed quiet. But it didn't change anything, because Luca didn't look away. He observed, studied, waited. Like he was trying to understand something he couldn't quite figure out. And somehow, that was more unsettling than fear. "You're staring." The words slipped out before she could stop them. It was late, the restaurant quieter, fewer people, less noise to hide behind. Amara stood at his table, setting down a glass. Her hand didn't shake, but her heart did. Luca didn't deny it. "I am." No hesitation, no apology, just truth. She exhaled slowly, a small, tired smile touching her lips. "That's rude." A faint shift in his expression, almost amusement. "You hide things," he said. Her smile faded slightly. "So do you." That made him pause, just for a moment. But it was enough, because men like Luca didn't pause, didn't get caught off guard, didn't get matched. Then something unexpected happened. He laughed, low, soft, real. The sound was rare enough that it changed the atmosphere completely. "You're not afraid of me," he said. Amara met his gaze. There it was again, that pull, that strange, dangerous connection she didn't understand. "I am." "Then why don't you act like it?" She hesitated, just for a second, then decided if she was already in this deep, she might as well tell the truth. "Because I've seen worse." Silence followed, not awkward, not empty, heavy, honest. Luca's expression shifted slightly, not anger, not offense, something quieter, something darker, because he understood what she meant, and he didn't like it. That was the moment everything changed, not loudly, not dramatically, but deeply. Because it wasn't about power anymore, or control, or curiosity. It was something else now, something softer, more dangerous. But the world Luca lived in didn't allow soft things to exist without consequences. And it didn't take long for those consequences to find her. The warning came quietly, a broken glass near her feet, a whisper as she passed the hallway. "Stay away from him." Amara froze, just for a second, her chest tightening, her instincts screaming, because this This she understood. This was the part where things got worse. She tried, she really did, avoided his table, took different sections, kept her distance. But it didn't matter, because Luca noticed everything. And once he chose something, he didn't let it go. And that was the real danger. Amara felt it the moment she walked in that night. Something was wrong. Not obvious, not loud, but wrong in a way that settled deep in her chest and refused to leave. The restaurant looked the same, lights glowing, music soft, conversations flowing like nothing had changed. But underneath it all, there was a tension she couldn't ignore. Too many unfamiliar faces, too many quiet corners, too many eyes that didn't belong. Her grip tightened slightly around the tray she carried. Instinct. The same instinct that had kept her safe for years. And right now, it was screaming. She spotted him almost immediately. Luca Moretti. Same table, same posture, same quiet authority that made the entire room orbit around him. But tonight, there was something different. He looked still, not relaxed, not distracted, waiting, like he already knew. Amara's steps slowed as she approached him, her heartbeat quickening despite her effort to stay calm. "You shouldn't be here tonight," she said quietly as she reached the table. The words slipped out before she could stop them. Luca looked up at her, unsurprised. "Why?" His voice was calm. Too calm. Her eyes flicked briefly toward the room, the unfamiliar men, the way they weren't eating, the way they were watching. Her voice dropped lower. "Because they're watching." A faint smile touched his lips. "They always are." "No," she said, shaking her head slightly. "This time is different." Something in her tone made him pause, just for a second. But that second was enough. The doors burst open, the sound cracked through the room like thunder. Everything shattered instantly. Men rushed in, voices shouted, chairs overturned, glass exploded against the floor. Panic spread like fire. Screams followed. And just like that, the illusion of safety disappeared. "Down!" someone yelled. People dropped, ran, crawled, anything to get away. But in the middle of it all, Luca didn't move. He sat there, calm, focused, like this was expected, like this was inevitable. Amara's breath caught. Why wasn't he moving? Why wasn't he reacting? A man lifted a gun. Time slowed. The world narrowed. And in that moment, Amara made a choice. She moved toward him, not away, not to safety, to him. It didn't make sense. It wasn't logical, but it was instinct, the same instinct that had guided her all her life. Only this time, it led her straight into danger. "Get down!" someone shouted again, but she didn't, because Luca was still sitting, still watching, still not moving, like he was waiting for the exact right moment. But the man with the gun wasn't waiting. The shot rang out, loud, sharp, final. And before anyone could react, Amara stepped in front of him. Pain exploded through her body, white, blinding, unbearable. The force knocked the air from her lungs as the world tilted violently around her. For a second, everything went silent. No screams, no gunshots, no chaos. Just nothing. Then Luca caught her. His hands were steady, but everything else wasn't. "Stay with me." His voice had changed. It wasn't calm anymore, wasn't controlled. It was raw, sharp, dangerous in a way no one in that room had ever heard before. Amara's vision blurred. Her body felt heavy, too heavy. Her fingers twitched weakly against his suit, leaving streaks of red behind. "You should have left," she whispered. Her voice was barely there, barely real. Luca shook his head immediately. No. The word came out firm, unyielding, like he could rewrite reality if he said it strongly enough. Around them, everything burned. His men moved fast, efficient, deadly. The attackers didn't last long. They never did. Not against someone like Luca. The chaos ended almost as quickly as it began. But none of it mattered. Not to him. Because for the first time in years, Luca Moretti wasn't in control. Not of the situation, not of the outcome, not of what mattered most in that moment. Her. "Look at me," he said, his voice lower now, but no less intense. Amara tried. Her eyes fluttered open slightly, focused on him, barely. "You're not dying," he said. It wasn't comfort. It wasn't hope. It was a command, the kind he was used to giving, the kind that usually worked. But this was different. Her lips curved faintly, a weak, almost invisible smile. "Bossy," she murmured. The word barely formed, but it hit him harder than anything else that night. Because even now, even like this, she wasn't afraid of him. His grip tightened slightly as he held her closer. "Stay awake." Her eyes struggled to stay open, her breathing uneven, fading. "You talk too much," she whispered faintly. And then, everything went dark. For a moment, Luca didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't think. Because something unfamiliar, something he hadn't felt in years, hit him hard. Fear. "Get the car," he snapped suddenly. His voice returned, cold, sharp, lethal. "Now." His men didn't hesitate, didn't question, because they had never heard that tone before. Not like this, not for anyone. As he carried her out, blood staining his hands, his clothes, everything, one thing became clear. This wasn't just another problem to solve, not just another situation to control. This was personal. And whoever had caused this was already dead. They just didn't know it yet. When Amara woke up, everything felt different. Not just the pain, though it was there. Dull, heavy, lingering beneath the surface like a reminder she couldn't escape. But something else had changed. Something quieter. Something deeper. The room was unfamiliar. Soft light filtered through tall windows. The air smelled clean, nothing like the restaurant, nothing like the life she knew. No noise, no pressure, no fear. For a moment, she thought she was dreaming, until she turned her head slightly and saw him, Luca Moretti, sitting beside her bed, still, silent, watching. "You're alive," she whispered. Her voice was rough, barely steady, but it was enough. Luca leaned forward immediately, his posture shifting in a way that told her he hadn't moved much since she got there. "You almost weren't." His voice was low, controlled again, but not the same. There was something under it now, something unguarded. Amara studied him for a moment, her vision still slightly blurred. "You stayed." It wasn't a question. He didn't hesitate. "Yes." Silence settled between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It wasn't heavy. It was real. She shifted slightly, wincing as pain spread through her side. Luca noticed instantly. His hand moved, then stopped halfway. Like he wasn't sure if he should touch her. Like this was new territory. "This doesn't happen again," he said. Her brow furrowed faintly. "What doesn't?" "You getting hurt." Amara let out a soft breath, almost a laugh. "You don't control everything." Luca's gaze darkened slightly. "Watch me." The words weren't arrogant. They weren't even threatening. They were certain. And that was more dangerous than anything else. She looked at him for a long moment, really looked this time. Not the power, not the reputation, not the man everyone feared, but him, the one sitting beside her bed, the one who hadn't left, the one who looked different because of her. "That's not how life works," she said softly. "Then it will," he replied. Simple, direct, uncompromising. And for the first time, Amara understood. This wasn't just about protection. This wasn't just about control. This was something else, something deeper, something that had already changed both of them, whether they wanted it to or not. Days passed, then weeks, and slowly Amara healed. The physical wounds faded first, the pain lessened, her strength returned. But the world she stepped back into wasn't the same one she left. She didn't return to the restaurant, didn't need to, didn't belong there anymore. Not after everything. Not after him. Now, people still looked at her, but they didn't look away. They watched, carefully, respectfully, cautiously. Because she wasn't invisible anymore. She was the one he chose. And in Luca Moretti's world, that meant everything. "Why me?" she asked one evening. They stood on a balcony overlooking the city, lights stretching endlessly into the night. Luca didn't answer immediately. For once, he took his time. Not because he didn't know, but because the answer mattered. "Because you saw me," he said finally. Amara shook her head slightly. "I didn't." He stepped closer, close enough that the distance between them disappeared. "Yes," he said quietly, "you did." And maybe that was the truth. Or maybe it was something they were still learning, something still unfolding. Because what started with a bruise had become something neither of them expected, something dangerous, something real. And in a world built on power, fear, and control, that kind of connection was the most dangerous thing of all. But this time, neither of them looked away.